Hello, and welcome to Book Circle Presents The Abigail Incident. Our heroes, Doug and Gus, have followed Dolores Graves into the Dreaming, where they find that they have to fight her brother, who is now a skeletonized mummy. They got rid of him for the time being, and are now finally able to talk to Dolores about what is going on. Dolores looked them over slowly, perhaps consulting some arcane senses, then nodded slightly to herself and began. My brother and I moved here 4 or 5 years ago. Moved back, really. Our family used to own the house. Gus nodded. You got run out of town back in the Depression. Raw deal. We read about it. Dolores blinked at him and nodded again. Our family needs a place. We're a bunch of drifters. We don't like it. Homeless, some of us. Agrippa and I and a few others thought this might be a good place to try. It was cheap, and we had some claim on it. That can make a difference in magic. And we hoped we could maybe change our luck here. The curse of the November people, Doug said with deliberate melodrama. We read about that, too. I'm guessing you didn't have much luck at changing luck. She gave him a sour look. Right, we didn't. We tried. We do know something about using magic for luck and about fighting magic with magic, but we got nowhere. Agrippa said we needed to work up a big blast of magic, so we set ourselves to sacrificing. Sacrificing to who? Asked Gus. Do you mean austerities? Asked Doug. She shrugged. To whatever passes out extra magic, I guess. What's austerities? Doing hard or uncomfortable things to build up magic, Doug answered. We call that sacrifices. It works. We got more power than we'd ever had. But it was pure misery, and it's walking a razor too much and Well, it happened to Agrippa. He starved himself to death? Doug asked. Only not really to death. Dolores squeezed her eyes shut, then opened them and stared at the beach sand. Gus noticed there were no waves. The water stood flat and still. Doug noticed the wind had died. Was she forgetting to keep this place running? That's right, she agreed, her voice pitched higher still, a short step from weeping. He died, but he wouldn't move on. It must be hell. But that's the sacrifice that gives him the power to keep alive, or whatever it is. Keep going. I'm sorry, Gus said softly. Where did that leave you? Doug asked. It's where it left him, she countered. He's crazy. Had been since before he died. He wants out of the house. Wants to go rampaging all over town. Eat his way through the grocery stores. Eat all the stray dogs and cats and other stuff. Raise a wall of fire around our yard or around the whole town. Silly stuff, crazy stuff. Gonna pull the bones out of the graveyard and set 'em to working for us, fighting for us. Her fair form was wearing thin along with the polish on her English. She looked undernourished and exhausted. Her hair was getting wispy. She waved a hand in disgust and dismissal. Crazy stuff, worse stuff. But he couldn't do any of those things. Doug and Gus both relaxed a bit. Can't even eat now. But he wants to get out, and if he does, he'll have his rampage. No telling what he'd do, but it won't be good. So you have to keep him in, Doug inferred. She nodded. It's a kind of ritual now. I fight him spell to spell all day and half the night, asleep on my feet half the time. Then he gives out, and I can eat and sleep for a while, maybe sneak out for a little walk. Remember, there's more to the world? You must be stronger than him, Doug said, to beat him every single night. She nodded, then shrugged. He's got more magic, but he has to use a lot to keep going, and that gets in the way of some of the other magic he tries. I'm alive. I am alive, she insisted, though no one had contradicted her. And I can fuddle him with dreams and mirages. Used to be he could dream too. But now he's so tight-fixed on getting out, he don't dream no more. Her voice rose in pitch through the last few words, broke, and became weeping. Then, oh, I wish he'd die. Ain't that a terrible thing to say about your own brother? Not under the circumstances, Doug said softly. It's 3 against 1 now, Gus told her. We can help. We're no spell slingers, but we got the physical side covered. 4 to 1, Doug said, if you can get Evertson going again. Oh, exclaimed Dolores. All that strength he took out of Chief Evertson, and you too. He's up. He's awake early. Get us there, Gus urged her. If the previous shifts of scene had been bursts of light, this was a burst of darkness. More than half ready to take battle form anyway, the two sprang into Lung Mao shape, their slitted pupils flaring wide. They stood in a bare room. Opposite them, before the open door, Chief Evertson lay face down on the floor. Crouching over him was the skeleton from the Dream Beach, looking exactly the same. He's got out of the kitchen, Dolores shrieked. He's almost out of the house. Grip, no! The skeleton raised its skull and gazed back, still poised over Evertson. It's already got all his chi, Gus muttered to Doug. What else it want? Doug recalled the talk of eating up stray cats and dogs. Meat, he answered. No! A giant lion, Gus flashed across the room and landed forepaws first on Agrippa's ribcage. A heartbeat behind, Lion Doug arrived and swatted the skull off the spine, just as he had done in Dream minutes before. The skull caromed out the door. Gus bit down on the ribs and shook them like a terrier with a rat. He made a discovery. He and Doug had been careful to cook the rabbits they had caught, because they had found that, as lions, raw rabbits tasted good, and this worried them. Gus now found that bones, even dry ones, also tasted good. He flung them away with a final head toss and worked on spitting out splinters. Doug padded out the door into the night. Dolores had been shrieking and was now just wailing, her head in her hands. Gus decided it was a good time to turn human again and put his gi back on. While he did that, he spotted a pack of water bottles on the floor. He took one to rinse his mouth, then headed out the door to spit. He met Doug coming in, human, naked, holding the skull in his hands. He looked revolted. Picked it up with my mouth, he said. Mistake. I wasn't thinking. Gus gave him the water bottle and spat out into the yard. Doug thanked him, drank with the skull tucked under one arm, and spat in turn. They went back in. Doug put the skull down and got dressed. That was a cute trick with your gi, by the way, he said to Gus. In the background, Dolores continued to wail. What trick? When you jumped on Agrippa, you just sort of squirted out of your gi like toothpaste out of a tube. Lion paste. I figured if you could, I could, so I did. I never even noticed. Gus looked at the cranium on the floor. Where's the jawbone? Doug looked around and pointed to it on the floor near Evertson's feet. Gus gathered it and all the other bones and fragments into a single pile by the chief's head. Is he gone? Doug asked him. Gus regarded the bones carefully for some seconds. I think so. Tell me what you think. Doug joined him, stared a while, then nodded. No chi, no presence. Dolores, he called. He's just dead now. We're pretty sure. She went on wailing. Doug went over to where she huddled on the bare floor near a doorway. He peered in. It was a kitchen. He looked down at Dolores. She was not quite as haggard as her mummy shape had looked. She had some hair. The white dress was rumpled but not rags. He lifted her up, then led her, half hugging her as they went, to Evertson and the bone pile. Look, he told her, he's dead. Just dead. I think he may be getting better treatment now than he gave himself. And there'll be no rampage. Her wailing died down and was replaced with a softer sobbing in which they heard notes of relief. Doug sat down next to Evertson, placed a hand on the back of his neck, and tried to push a little chi into the man. Immediately he felt dizzy. Agrippa had pulled more out of him than he had realized, and now all that chi had gone up in smoke. "Let me try," said Gus. He sat down on the other side of the man, touched the neck, and promptly wobbled where he sat. Evertson began to snore. Dolores had stopped crying and now just stood staring at them. "Dolores," Doug asked, "do you have any chi, any strength to spare? Could you give Evertson enough to wake up with? Otherwise he'll be here till dawn." She shuffled over timidly, knelt, and touched the back of his head. The snoring stopped. She held her hand in place as the chief came gradually back to waking. "Don't you have any?" she asked Gus and Doug. "Tiny scraps," Doug answered, sighing. "But how can you change shapes like that? That's big-time magic, the biggest I ever saw." "Practice," Gus answered. "It's the only magic we do, really, and we do it a lot. So we get good at it, so a scrap of chi is all we need. Good thing. Chief, hey, Chief, show's over." Evertson coughed, sighed, and pushed himself up. He looked around, taking in presently human Doug and Gus, Dolores in the flesh for once, and the thoroughly disarticulated human bones. He sat up and looked around, scanning the bare room and the open door, letting in dim streetlight. "What?" "We won," Gus told him. "You've only been out a couple of minutes," Doug said. "Dolores had fought Agrippa to a standstill, the way she's been doing every night, but then he roused again when we dropped by, all full of tasty chi, so he drained us, including you, and then she and he started at it again. We are not at all in Dolores's league for raw magical power, but she got us back here, and we handled it on the physical level." He gestured at the bone pile. "You killed him?" Evertson asked, confusion and worry blending in his tone. "Does that look like anything that was alive tonight?" Gus asked. Evertson stared at the bones for a second, then turned to Dolores. "Miss Graves, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, as one does. Then, really, I just... Doug grabbed her as she bent over, then collapsed and sat on the floor crying again. "That's a no," Doug told Evertson. He sat down next to Dolores and put an arm around her shoulder. She did not react. Gus sat down on the other side, stared for a while at the pile of bones he had been chewing just now, then said to Evertson, "She's half-starved or more. Maybe she has anorexia. She is so run down I have no words. She just dropped a load of hell. That's great, but there's rebound, you know." Evertson nodded. Gus contemplated the bones for another while. Dolores stopped crying, at least out loud. Finally, Gus asked Evertson, "What's your wife like?" "What?" "Is she kind? Is she level-headed?" "Yeah, sure, plenty, more'n me." "Why?" "Oh, She needs help," said Gus. "All kinds of help. No job. All she has in the world is this empty house and an uneven dribble of cash from her family. She probably ought to be taken to the hospital, but I don't know who'd pay for that." "Did I say I wanted to move in with the chief and his wife?" demanded Dolores. Annoyance probably made a pleasant change from her earlier emotions. "No," agreed Gus, "but you need help. We all know it. You deserve help. You've saved this town from your brother's one-man zombie invasion every night for 4 years. You need rest and food and time to think. After we leave, Chief Evertson will be the only one who knows what's going on. Him and, "You think I should get my wife mixed up in this sundering stuff?" the chief asked in no friendly tone. "Yes, we do," said Doug. "We don't have wives, but we have parents and brothers and sisters. When we got back, we had to decide whether to show them or not. Yes, it could wind up being dangerous, but it's that or keep a big fat secret the rest of your life. Or try to and fail. You want to pay that piper?" Evertson shifted his gaze uneasily. Doug decided to tighten the screw. "What kind of marriage do you have?" he asked. Evertson stared back coldly for some seconds, then said, "Get out there on the porch, the two of you. I need some privacy." Dolores struggled to rise with them, but Evertson said, "You stay here, miss." He pulled a phone out of his pocket, and as they exited, they heard him saying, "Hi, honey. Sorry to get you up. It's strange and important." "You know what I think?" said Doug as they sat down on the porch steps. "What?" "I think he wouldn't exactly mind if we ran off into the night, but he wants to hang on to Dolores, privacy or not." Gus nodded, then stared out at the night. Ordinary night, solid, mundane, containing nothing stranger than himself. He sighed his relief, then asked, "What'll we do with the bones?" "Not our problem." "Neither was Agrippa." "Well, okay, when you put it that way." Doug pulled out his own phone and woke up Theano far away in Great Bend. The chief had insisted Gus and Doug come home with him. "You're going to show Carol your tricks, otherwise why's she going to believe any of this?" Carol Evertson had believed, with only one shriek and a short burst of hysterics. Then she had listened carefully to their biographies, and Dolores's, and the tale of the Abigail incident. Then she had put everyone to bed until 10 a.m. At noon, Dolores was still asleep upstairs in the bedroom vacated when the Evertsons' daughter had gone to college, while everyone else was in the kitchen. Mrs. Evertson was making stacks of sandwiches while Gus and Doug helped. "Stop eating rabbit," she commanded. "You'll get worms. And it's no good. It's too low in fat. You can starve on a diet of rabbit. Probably why you stuck your heads into buckets of chicken as soon as you came to town." "Yes, ma'am. Happy to, ma'am." "I hope she's really sleeping," said Gus, glancing upward toward the spare bedroom, "and not getting into trouble over there." "Nothing we can do about it," said Doug. Then he said to the Evertsons, "Be sure to call that number Theano gave you as soon as you can." "I will," promised Evertson, "though I don't see how one pastor's funeral service can be more effective than another's." "I don't know details," said Doug, spreading mayonnaise, "but Theano said he's a ghost hunter as well as a pastor. If Agrippa hasn't already left, this guy'll sniff him out and knows how to force him out." "You can force ghosts?" asked Carol Evertson. "They're tricks," Doug answered. "We know a couple. This guy must know more. He'll probably teach some to you. You might need them now that you're sundered." "Sorry about that," Gus muttered, tucking a sandwich into a plastic bag. "I needed to know," Carol said firmly, slicing ham. "Promises are important to fairy tale creatures, right?" "Promises are always important," said Gus, the fairy tale creature. "Well, there's one about for better or worse. I don't know if this is better or worse or just sideways, but I'm sticking with it." The chief got up from where he was, took her in his arms, and kissed her full on the mouth, ignoring the very strange strangers. When they eventually broke the clinch, Doug coughed gently and said, "Remember to ask the pastor about keeping Dolores's family curse off you." "Well, okay," said Carol, "but I don't believe in luck." "Bet you didn't believe in elf nights either," Gus remarked. "Well, random stuff happens," said Doug, "and there are people who can use magic to make the randomness swing their way. Most people call that luck magic. And someone laid a bad case on Dolores's family over a century ago. Maybe this minister can do something about it, or knows someone who can." "Start making contacts," Gus advised. "Carefully, of course. You can start with this pastor." "And you've already got Theano in the circus," Doug added. The chief drove them out to the cornfield where they had stashed their backpacks. Carol insisted on coming too. She politely observed the corn while the two got back into their street clothes, then surprised them by giving each a firm kiss on the cheek. "No more rabbit," she reminded them. "I'm sure that nice Madame Theano will pay for a few restaurant meals." "Right, yes'm." Chief Evertson pumped their hands. "Sorry I was so suspicious." "Why wouldn't you be?" "Very natural." "I hope your circus does come to town sometime soon," he concluded. And he and his wife got in the cop car and drove away. Doug and Gus slipped their swords into their packs, shouldered them, and hit the road for distant Great Bend. Doug sighed in relief. Well, the rest of the hike should be quiet. Both their phones rang. Gus cuffed Doug on the shoulder. "You jinxed it," he said. The end.